What is up, everyone? Sergeant Ergerwood here, and today we're going to be reacting to the main reason why Germany lost World War II, oil. And yeah, this should be part two. If you haven't watched part one, go back and watch it. There should be like a link somewhere, like in the top right or something like that. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. We're on part four. Heading to Moscow? Question mark. Okay.
If you read Guderian, you will.
Oh boy, Guderian. I actually have his the autobiography he wrote or something, or his memoir. I forgot what it was, but yeah, I actually have it. It's very old though. That's the sad part.
know that Hitler's decision to turn south during Barbarossa cost the Germans the time needed to take Moscow. This was often seen as a mistake. No, it wasn't. If Germany
Taking Moscow would not be uh, like the deciding factor. I don't get why people think that. Like, what significance does it have? Like, sure, it's I guess lowers the morale, or and also it's also a train junction, but really that's it. Russia lost like millions of people in encirclements and lost all these gigantic cities, and they were ready to fight till the end. Like they would have fought until past the Urals, like into Siberia. Like Russia was really determined, and that's what happens whenever you have a dictator, like in control. They don't they don't surrender unless like, especially when they're against freaking Germany, who's killing millions of Slavs and stuff and Jews. So they're obviously not going to want to surrender.
succeeds in taking Moscow, that is obviously a grave disappointment for us, but it by no means disrupts our grand strategy. Germany would gain accommodation, but that alone will not win the war. The only thing that matters is oil. As we remember, Germany kept harping on about her own urgent oil problems in her economic bargaining with us from 1939 to 1941. So we have to do all we can, A, to make Germany increase her oil consumption, and B, to keep the German armies out of the Caucasus. That's a speech by Timoshenko in
And
November
also, I don't know if they're going to mention this or not, but initially, the Soviets actually like had most of their divisions in the south because they thought that Germany, like, because they knew that that was the most important place to protect. But the reason why Germany didn't focus on the south at the very beginning was because they thought they could just capitulate them like easily, so they just attacked in all directions. They didn't expect it to be like they had to concentrate in one area just to get what they needed. You know, they thought that they could just march in everywhere and easily like push them down.
of 1941. The Soviets will not surrender if Moscow falls, just like Russia did not surrender in 1812 against Napoleon. Hitler deemed Moscow to be, quote, not very important and actually wanted to concentrate forces to the south. Halder did not want to do that, and subsequently the High Command did not do that, favouring the Moscow Axis.
Oh
Striking
gosh.
south makes more sense, and not just for the oil. Since the British blockade precluded
Yeah, and also like there's that giant Volga River, so that would be important to cut off, you know, for supplies and stuff like that. And also there's an important city, Stalingrad. Yeah.
the importation of additional foodstuffs from outside Europe, Germany faced the bitter
Oh yeah, and there's food and other resources too in the
prospect, as
Caucasus, I
in
think.
1917-18, of food shortages, hunger, and political upheaval. Worryingly, Belgian miners had already gone on strike in the winter of 1940-41 to protest the meagre food supplies, while on the 1st of May 1941, German civilians had to face a drastic reduction in their own rations. The Ukraine was a central target, as well as the Caucasus, which was also a fertile food production area. On the strategic level, most of the goals were in the south, the Ukraine and the Caucasus. It makes little sense then that Halder and his staff decide to concentrate in the north and centre. The German military leadership, in fact, displayed a woeful lack of understanding of economic factors by training and tradition focused almost exclusively on the operational tactical aspects of planning. The OKH designed a plan based on the lessons of the 1940 French campaign that emphasized a swift, decisive concentric thrust.
Doesn't seem like a good idea to like base to implement what you did in France and the Soviet Union. Like they're two very different countries.
Towards the enemy capital, unconcerned by the fact that the economically vital regions lay in the south. It's worth noting that after World War II, Halder is the advisor at the US Army Historical Division and is the central figure influencing the post-war German narrative of the war. He's the guy the other generals are going to, and he's the one who is coming up with the narrative that says Hitler was the cause of all of Germany's blames and mistakes during the war. Halder and his generals are not going to admit their own mistakes, and when you read the early World War II histories, the ones most people are familiar with, because that is the post-war narrative, they show that Moscow was the correct route and Halder was right and Hitler was wrong. Reluctantly, Hitler gave into the urging of Brauchitsch, Halder and Bock, and consented to the resumption of the drive on Moscow.
Oh gosh.
But too late.
Why?
This
though?
comes after a few pages of constantly going on about how Hitler made the wrong decision to turn south and how Halder was so right. This is why Guderian is saying how bad the decision to turn from Moscow and help the Army Group South was. Hitler said that the raw materials and agriculture of the Ukraine were vitally necessary for the future prosecution of the war. He spoke once again of the need of neutralizing the Crimea, that Soviet aircraft carrier, for attacking the Romanian oil fields. For the first time, I heard him use the phrase, "My generals know nothing about the economic aspects of war." Hitler's words all led up to this. He had given strict orders that the attack on Kiev was to be the immediate strategic objective, and all actions were to be carried out with that in mind. I here saw for the first time a spectacle with which was later to become very familiar. All those present nodded in agreement with every sentence that Hitler uttered, while I was left alone with my point of view. But Guderian is wrong, and is alone in his point of view because, as Hitler says, he doesn't understand the strategic and economic aspects of the war. And the best part is, Halder is actually awarded the Meritorious Civilian Service Award in 1960.
But why was Halder like propped up though by the US? Like why was he in charge of the historical division thing? Why? What was the reason?
For helping the US military in their historical research. So yeah, Halder and his cronies paint a completely biased picture of the war, blame Hitler for bad decisions even though they weren't, show themselves in as good a light as possible even though they in fact made the bad decisions, and then also then gets awarded for doing.
Oh yeah, well, what time am I gonna stop? I guess 33? Yeah, and then how long is this video? Okay, so 33 to 46. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to stop at this part, part 7.
So, but apparently when you try and point this out to people, you get branded a revisionist. No, the German sources are biased, just like the Soviet sources, and they are twisting the facts to manipulate the way you perceive the war. And just to point out, there's no such thing as a revisionist historian. Historian, by definition, looks at the sources and questions them. If they don't do that, well, you're not a historian. Anyway, so Halder and the German general's narrative of the war is biased towards the Moscow axis and is painting Hitler.
Actually, probably part 6. That would be a more accurate time frame. Like it would make 3 videos more even.
As a madman. No, going towards Moscow is a terrible decision. So tight were fuel rations that in November 1941, Opel was forced to shut down production at its Brandenburg plant, Germany's largest truck factory, because it lacked the petrol necessary to check the fuel pumps and of vehicles coming off the assembly line. A special allocation of 104 cubic meters of fuel had to be arranged by the Wehrmacht's economic office so as to ensure that there was no further interruptions. The German economy is on its last legs. The German Wehrmacht is critically short of fuel despite having absolute priority. It runs out of fuel in October and November 1941. The Germans, in fact, reach the Caucasus and take Rostov in 1941, but are thrown back during the Soviet winter counteroffensive. Interestingly, terrible German logistics actually plays into their favour, as Hayward points out, because the backlog of fuel trains ends up clearing in December and fuel therefore does get to the front, which allows the German army to fight on through the winter months. But essentially, from this point on, the Germans are now not able to wage the war that they had before. They can no longer advance on a broad front like they did during 1941. They would only have enough fuel.
Yes, so I guess that's... Yeah, because, like, if you look at the size difference between how much land they took, it from 1941 to 1942 operations, it is way, way different.
Supply one German army group. This is why Moscow isn't taken in 1942. Instead, Hitler sends his panzers south. This is his last chance to find oil.
The last chance.
Case-Blau and Stalingrad is Hitler's absolute last chance of winning the war. He even says, if I do not get the oil of Mayakop and Grozny, then I must end the war. And he was right.
Geez.
Fuel too was in such short supply that the Wehrmacht High Command in 1942 cut the fuel ration to the Austherr considerably, a blow to its mobility accentuated by the serious loss of horses. The OKW warns in June of 1942 that the army will have no choice but to partially demotorize. Yes, demotorize. Those of you who say that the Germans didn't have enough tanks or trucks or equipment, you're half right. They actually did have enough tanks.
Wow, we looked at that last time, but it's so crazy. Like, almost double the amount that they started with in 1941. That is in just 2 years. But at the same time, like, they weren't even able to use it.
Numbers were greater in 1942 than in 1941, and again in 1943 compared to 1942. The problem is that they don't have enough petrol to run the ones that they've got already. Tellingly, at a time when the Soviets were rapidly rebuilding and mechanizing their forces, the Wehrmacht was in the process of re-equipping its reconnaissance units with bicycles. This...
Dang, so it's just like the Wehrmacht was slowly getting worse and the Soviets were slowly getting better. Wow. And yeah, the speed at which the Soviets improved their position is crazy too. Like, just within a few years, they were literally like they were literally like one of the most powerful in the world with their army. Like, they could defeat almost anyone except for the United States.
The modernization of the Austherr did not bode well, given that the success of the campaign depending on seizing objectives more than 800 miles from the German start line, an operational and logistic challenge greater than that of the previous summer. A lot of people, including historians, say that the Germans were aiming for Baku. The Germans don't actually need to take Baku.
Baku is like in that one peninsula in Azerbaijan or something, right? I think so.
They just need to take Mayakop and Grozny, and technically they do get to them, but they only manage to extract 750 tons of crude oil from them per month before they're forced back. But this is Hitler's last chance. He's now at war with Britain and the Soviet Union, which is bad enough as it is, but he's also now at war with the United States, the leading oil power of the world. America's trucks, tanks, planes, trains. They sent a lot of trains to the Soviet Union, which...
And this is also... If you think about it, this is also the main reason why Japan lost World War II. Just as a side note, because the whole reason why Japan declared war on the United States was because of the oil embargo. And then Japan lost like 90% of its oil supply, so it wanted to, I guess, go to war with the United States. Um, So then it made Japan want to take over those like little countries down in the south that were British, that were colonies of Europeans to get their oil and stuff. And then that they did a preemptive strike on the United States because the United States was starting to get mad in Pearl Harbor, which made them lose. So if you think about it, this wasn't just why Germany lost World War II. This is why like the Axis lost World War II. It's very interesting. And sorry, I explained that like really horribly. I don't. Yeah, I don't explain stuff very well.
May have been more important than the
What the heck? What happened to the? Okay, what the heck just happened? Hello.
trucks they sent, and vast quantities of
It
other
says there's
equipment.
audio in the
Well, they're on their way.
right. Look,
Unlike the
it
Germans,
literally
the
says there's audio
Allies
right
have
here.
the
I don't
fuel
understand why
to
it does
run them.
this.
It's just a matter of
Go away.
time. Hitler knows
I don't
this
care. I don't want to
and knows
install
his
another
only
thing.
chance to fight.
Jeepers, jeepers. Usually, if I connect it and reconnect it a bunch of times, it works. So yeah,
And vast quantities of
it
other
works.
equipment. Well, they're on their way. And unlike
By the way, the problem was that I could not hear anything. I know that y'all could, but for some reason it wasn't letting me hear the audio.
the Germans, the Allies have the fuel to run them. It's just a matter of time. Hitler knows this and knows his only chance to fight against the material superiority that's heading his way is to capture the oil in the Caucasus. If he gets the oil, his economy will be saved and he would have the resources of continental Europe at his disposal. He would have the fuel to motorize and mechanize his army, and the panzers would have the fuel they need to actually fight. The Blitzkrieg would be back on, but he only has a narrow window of opportunity to take the oil. This is
I can't even imagine how like effective the Blitzkrieg would be whenever like they have all their supplies. They use. Ow! I just bit my tongue. Jesus. They have like their crazy like freaking Panther tanks and whatever else like advanced tanks and planes that they have. And they have all the resources and oil and food that they need. And they're on meth, just like they were in real life in France. Like just imagine all of that together in like against a country. That would be that would literally be insane. Like I don't think any country in the entire world would be able to stop that. Like I don't know, it's just so cool imagining that in my head. Whoa. I'm gonna try to like recreate that in Hearts of Iron 4. That is so freaking cool. I don't know. Just a cool thought that I had.
why it was vitally important that the Caucasus be taken in 1942 and why the Stalingrad campaign is important too. There's two aspects to this plan of Hitler's as well. The first is to get the oil at Mayakop and Grozny. The second is to cut the Soviets off from Baku. Now he can't get to Baku, but what he can do is block the Volga. Perhaps they shouldn't.
And I think that's one of the reasons why they went to Stalingrad, just to sort of block the Volga. The thing about the Stalingrad situation is they didn't really think Stalingrad would be that much of an issue. They saw it more of as like a speed bump. They didn't think it would be so hard to take over and that they would be encircled.
Have gone into the city of Stalingrad, but sat south of it on the Volga and just prevented the oil tankers from heading north. And well, we'll leave the tactical decisions behind this debate for another day. But if the Germans cut the Volga, the Soviet Union would be crippled. The loss of the Caucasus would deprive the Soviet Union of half of its oil reserves and 80 to 90% of its crude oil production, refinery output, and pipeline capacity. Meanwhile, severing the transit lines along the Volga would eliminate the most effective means of moving oil to central Russia from either the Caucasus, covering a distance of 1,000.
And they did this in real life, so I wonder how effective that was.
1,200 kilometers on average to reach its domestic consumers, or the Volga Urals, the second Baku. Without oil and without food, and by the way, the Soviets were getting hungry already thanks to the loss of the Ukraine, the Soviet war effort would be in a dire situation.
Yeah.
This would have given Hitler the oil he needed to keep fighting and deprive the Soviets of the oil and food they needed to fight effectively. Germany would have been placed in the best position, the best chance of winning, if they'd taken the Caucasus and cut the Volga. This was Hitler's last real gamble. This is why the Stalingrad campaign is a turning point. It may not be the big turning point of the war. Arguably, that may have already happened, and we'll ask that question. What was the big turning point of the war in another video? But
oh yeah, I saw that video. His argument was basically, you guys just watch it. I don't want to spoil it.
If Hitler had won this fight in 1942, it's likely that the Soviets would have collapsed in 1943, 1944.
Probably not 1943. It would have probably been a very, 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 very long time.
German economic assessments of the Soviet Union's precarious economic situation in early 1942 also had some merit. The Soviet economy was in fact on the verge of collapse due to the loss of numerous economic and raw materials assets during Operation Barbarossa. Moreover, the Soviet Union was already dependent by 1942 on Lend-Lease assistance, especially food and specialty petroleum products such as high-octane gasoline. Consequently, there is every reason to think that the loss of the Caucasus would have rendered the Red Army combat ineffective within a year. Cutting the oil route north would mean that the Red Army...
Yeah, but then again, they have like the freaking Urals to hide behind, and then the thousands of miles of tundra in the Siberia.
Would barely have enough reserves of oil to wage war in 1943, and probably would have paralysed what remained of Soviet agriculture production. And Stalin knows this as well. He tells Deputy Oil Commissar Nikolai Beerpikov that if he doesn't destroy the oil fields before the Germans capture them, he would be shot. The Soviets therefore ensure that the oil fields are destroyed, so thoroughly in fact that even the Germans were impressed by the effort they went to do it.
Really?
The issue with the 1942 campaign was that, well, it's off distance. The Germans simply don't have enough men and equipment to do the task. I'll be covering this in great detail.
Like, literally, look how I know it just looks like a map, but, like, just imagine
Detail in my upcoming...
how much that is, and how many, and the people that have to be there. Like, it's literally there's so much land that they're covering. Such a big line, and plus, they also have to have troops in other areas, like North Africa, and having garrisons and stuff. So it's crazy.
Stalingrad documentary.
Like, they were so stretched out.
But effectively, the Germans and Axis allied forces are not capable of what was needed, and they are defeated. When you read the accounts of German panzer formations advancing in this campaign, you hear how they keep running out of fuel. This means their attack on Stalingrad, for example, is often a stop-start affair, as they're waiting for more fuel to catch up to them. Yes, logistics does play its part, but actually a lot of it is simply the fact that the Germans have run out of fuel.
Okay, and here we go. That will be the last part for today. And then tomorrow we'll react to the next episode, the last part. And after that, guys, we are going to be reacting to the next episode of Napoleon's Marshals. So get excited for that. But yeah, thank you all for watching, everyone, and goodbye. Hello, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel. and turn on the notification bell thingy. And if you didn't, then make sure to leave a thumbs down. But yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. And while you're at it, go ahead and watch my other videos. They're probably just as good, and if not better than this one right now. Except for my oldest videos, don't watch those. And, subscribe to these people down here, my fellow sergeants. They're other YouTubers that I either know or I have in high regards. Yeah, even my cat agrees. So, thank you for watching, and have a great day.